Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners, Mr. Tiefenk, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General, Mr. City Attorney, members of the public. Sorry for the late start this morning. We've been having technical difficulties. The time is now 9:40 a.m. The date is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. This is a special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning, Commissioner Briggs,
Present.
Commissioner Decker,
Present.
Commissioner Bonner,
Here.
Commissioner Kalanche absent, Commissioner Sobroff.
Here.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Also present, we have the Executive Director, the Inspector General, the City Attorney, and sitting in for the Chief of Police, Assistant Chief Grimala. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, Chief Grimala.
Good morning. My apologies for the technical difficulties. There was an issue with the link, so I had to change my venue, but thank you for your patience, everyone.
Absolutely. We welcome everyone to this morning's meeting. All public comment will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways that are outlined on the agenda. At this time, we will move to item 1 on the agenda. And again, good morning, Chief Grimala.
Good morning. Thank you all, Commissioner Briggs, all of the Board of Police Commissioners, City Attorney De La Guerra, Executive Director Tiefenk, and to members of the public who are tuning in today. I'd like to begin the report with a update on COVID-19 and its effects on the department. To begin with, looking at the vaccination numbers. Total department employees who have been vaccinated are at 77%. This is 9,505 department employees, and that includes both civilian and sworn personnel. Partially vaccinated, 308. And those that are unvaccinated at this time, as of November the 15th, 2,729, or 23%. Moving on to looking at the numbers of exemptions filed, both for civilian and sworn. And a side note here, employees have until December the 18th to file for exemptions. These are both medical and religious in nature. 2,303 total exemption requests have been filed. Sworn, 1,981, and civilian, 322. As we look to the number of notices served on our employees, both civilian and sworn, 2,524 notices have been served, with 1,734 exemptions filed. There are another 790 where no exemption has been filed, but those are individuals have been served, but have the 48 hours still yet to respond to that. As we look at number of personnel currently assigned home who have decided not to take the vaccine and not to sign, we have a total of 6, 5 sworn and 1 civilian. As we also look to the number of employees who are at home having tested positive for COVID, 70 in total, 62 being sworn, and 8 being our civilian employees. As we look at current hospitalizations, we currently have 1 sworn department employee who is still hospitalized since August for COVID-related issues. We had an update on that individual's condition. We are very, very cautiously optimistic as that employee is currently showing some signs of improvement. We also want to thank the Department Operations Center and all of the offices because daily they are required to report not only on our staffing levels as impacted by COVID, but also the compliance rate and the service rate as I've described here to you today. I'd like to move on now to significant issues, incidents and activities going from November the 9th to November the 15th. We're pleased to report there were no officer-involved shootings in this past week or reported categorical uses of force. So our numbers remain unchanged at 32 this year, officer-involved shootings versus 26 last year to date. On a couple other notes, I had the opportunity to visit Operation School Bell on Wheels that was being hosted at Universal Studios this past Wednesday, where in cooperation with the Los Angeles Unified School District, the Assistance League of Los Angeles, great supporters such as Carla Amundsen, over 280 LAUSD school children were able to be personally outfitted with uniforms and necessary apparel to start their school year. And as many of you know, close to 65% of students within the LAUSD system live at or near the poverty line. So these programs are extremely important. And I also want to thank Commander Billy Brockway and the public engagement section of the department, who actually assisted in helping some of the young children select backpacks, tennis shoes, and uniform items of apparel. So it was a very uplifting event. We also thank Universal Studios for allowing us space in one of their parking lot areas because it had to be configured slightly differently because of COVID restrictions. 2 other events of note that I'd just like to put on everybody's radar and on our minds is the LA Civil and Human Rights Department wanted to remind everyone that this week is United Against Hate Week in the United States. And we take time to be reflective of where we individually, personally stand, our interactions with others, and the importance of making sure that LA is here and open and available to everyone. The last item I'd like to cover is coming up this Saturday, November the 20th. And it's a somber day, but it's a day of recollection and reflection as well. And it is the Transgender Day of Remembrance. Year to date in the United States, 45 members of the transgender community have lost their lives in crimes of violence. This is above the 2020 number of 44. We still know that these numbers are woefully underreported for a variety of reasons, but I just wanted to draw attention to this very significant event. There will be, I think, small memorials around the city. Again, because of COVID restrictions, some of those are limited, but I thought that it was important for the department to emphasize that coming up on Saturday. And as the chief's liaison to the LGBTQ community, I feel it's very important as we continue to try to build those bonds of trust that we take time out to recognize those who so tragically lost their lives. Moving on now, I'd like to talk about our crime statistics. Violent crime citywide is up 6%. And when we look specifically at homicide numbers year to date, we are up 14.48%. When we look a little bit deeper at those homicide numbers, there were 2 areas specifically that I wanted to highlight here today compared to 2020. And those are homicides that are domestic violence related. We see an uptick of 54.5%, 17 this year versus 11 last year. And also, when we talk about homicides, looking at our homeless population, we're up close to 30% year to date, with 74 people experiencing homelessness who have died as a result of homicide versus 57 last year. So additionally, year to date, we are looking at an addition of 43 homicides in the city of Los Angeles. So 340 versus 297. As we look also with great concern as our victims shot, they're up year to date 15.6%, which is an additional 171 victims. And so often we speak in numbers and data and statistics, but it's really a time to take pause and understand that not only behind every number is a face, is a person, is a story, but a loving family and those close to these individuals who are also experiencing the trauma of that loss of life. So when we look at our numbers for victims shot this year to date, it's 1,270 versus 1,099 in 2020. I did want to take note for a moment, looking at the last 3 weeks of our numbers with regards to homicide and shooting victims. And we have gained a very small but significant gain. And that is looking from October 23rd at our homicide percentage was at 17.3%. And now looking at November 13th, we have dipped a bit to 14.1%. So that's a 3.2% dip in the rate of homicide. Is this anything that we should say we are proud of? Absolutely not. One loss of life is a loss of life too many. But I wanted to underscore, as we look at also violent crime arrests that are up 3.6% in the city, we are trying to make a significant difference and focus, especially on homicides, and now also on shooting victims. I'd also like to highlight where we have seen ourselves go in the last 3 weeks with regard to shooting victims. The week ending October 23rd, we found ourselves at 19.5% as an increase in shooting victims in the city of Los Angeles. And the week ending November the 13th, we find ourselves at 15.6%. So as we try through reflection on our missions, on our focus, on our goals, we just wanted to share that information. Much ground to cover, too many lives lost, but I thought it was significant to bring up here today. Why did we see those changes? I have to say not only credit to the men and women who are out there every day serving this city, but also a special note to a Community Safety Partnership Bureau, Chief Amada Tingarides, her work with interventionists, the prevention mode in which they operate in our housing developments, which were oftentimes in the past seen as sadly areas in which violent crime had taken hold. Also, the Office of Special Operations, Metropolitan Crime Impact Teams that assist our geographic detectives in making follow-ups in real time on collection of evidence and assisting geographic area detectives so that we can get an increased, rate of filing. I'd like to also now turn to a little information on guns. And not only Los Angeles, but every major metropolitan city is experiencing the uptick in gun violence. Year to date in 2021, we have recovered 2,266 more firearms than we did compared to 2020. That's an increase of 43.38%. 1,184 of those guns have been ghost guns. And we've talked before in the commission, the chief has, on the proliferation of ghost guns, the difficulty it causes for investigators on solvability of crimes. But I just wanted to underscore that as we talk about shooting victims, homicides, and what we are up against with the proliferation of firearms. But I thought that was notable as well. Moving on to gang crime, we are down still 20.8% year to date in the city. Looking at violent crime arrests, as I mentioned, 3.6% increase year to date. So again, we are trying to focus on that violent crime picture. But when we talk about violent crime, I'd just like to take a moment where there's been much media attention put on the follow home or follow off robberies that we have been seeing in the city of Los Angeles. There are 6 geographic areas where we find it most prominent. But our thanks to Captain John Tippett, the commanding officer of Robbery Homicide Division, as he assists the Office of Operations and the Office of Special Operations in bringing to justice some of the trend and the trends that we are seeing with regard to certain groups that have created this anxiety and this trend throughout the city of Los Angeles. 110 year to date as we look at follow home or follow off robbery situations. And again, 6 areas of the city in which we find them concentrated. Looking at property crime, just want to touch on that very quickly. Year to date, we're up 2.2% citywide. We're seeing that in motor vehicle theft and burglary theft from motor vehicles. We're asking, again, as the chief did last week, for the public's help in trying to harden that target. Key fobs left in vehicles, unlocked vehicles, and also those who are in the food delivery sector, leaving cars running with keys in them or key fobs in them. We please ask you to gain better situational awareness and try to harden that target with us so that we can make some impacts on those preventable areas of property crime. Holiday reminders as well. Through the Office of Operations, all 4 bureaus will be presenting holiday plans, again, to educate the community, but also to take different manners and forms of focus on things that we are seeing as described here already. We've had meetings with our big box stores, with local retailers that have been very productive. And this week as well, we will be having a meeting with some of the staff of Amazon to see how we can prevent thefts of packages as well during the holiday season. Moving lastly on to department personnel strength. We're currently at 9,473 sworn employees. We are under deployed for what we are funded for by 181. Currently in the academy, we have 274 recruits, and the next class, which is slated for November the 22nd, shows so far 42 coming up there as well. But I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about our civilian employees. As we all know here, extremely critical to hourly and day-to-day operations on this department. We show a strength of 2,668 civilian employees, but we are again under deployed by 174. And each one of those performs a critical function for us here on the department. With regard to reserves, we show at 403, 313 of those being level 1, who are the ones we often see across the city working our footbeats. Volunteers, 2,157, and cadets, 1,248. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief Grimala. I just have a couple of questions before I open it up to my colleagues. With respect to the figures that you gave concerning violent crime and domestic violence, are we finding that any of the domestic violence involves ghost guns?
So far, Commissioner Briggs, we have not seen that as a trend or a pattern. I can take a deeper dive and come provide that information next week, but that was not something that was on the radar with regard to domestic violence.
Thank you. And with respect to the uptick or the trend in crimes against transgender individuals, is that, I understood that to be a national trend. Is that also a trend here in Los Angeles?
With regard to hate crimes, yes, anti-transgender hate crimes are on the rise, and I know we'll hear later in today's meeting on AAPI, but we'll also hear from Orlando Martinez. But as we talk about homicides, the number of 45 year to date is a national number. But again, we believe that that is underreported as well, as people are not being identified as a member of the transgender community as statistics are being collected. And that is something that we have seen historically from the times in 2013 when these numbers were actually truly being collected.
Thank you, Chief Kamala. At this time, Commissioner Decker, I see you have your mic open.
Thank you, Commissioner Briggs. Thank you for your report, Chief Gramala, much appreciated. I do want to begin just acknowledging two things. First, on Operation School Bell, I've been to some of those events in the past, and indeed a wonderful event, and I greatly appreciate the participation of you in the department in that. With respect to United Against Hate Week and to raise awareness, I do also want to acknowledge your work in that area, all the outreach you and your team are doing with community members, as well as working with city commissioners. So I do thank you for that, Chief Gramala. I did have a few follow-up questions to your report on crime, and particularly on the domestic violence numbers, because for some time during the pandemic, we've all been concerned, experts have been concerned about the potential rise in domestic violence. And it's one of the first times I've heard significant numbers to support that fear. And so I appreciate you bringing it to everyone's attention. It's critically important that we raise awareness as well as the services, information about the services that are available. But Chief, can you advise me in terms of an uptick of domestic violence related homicides being up 54.5%. I hope I wrote that down correctly. How is it that that number is being calculated? Is it based upon the arrestees who are taking place, suspects, or what are the determining factors in calculating that it's a domestic violence related homicide?
Thank you very much, Commissioner Decker. We look at the situation, the victim, the suspect, the relationship there, be it intimate partner, be it husband, wife, domestic partner, be it a child, mother, father. Also, those situations factor in as well. But we do see that increase of 17 compared to 11 last year. But we're also, Commissioner, to your point, tracking intimate partner aggravated assaults, which are portend what may come later. And we don't want those numbers to increase. We're actually looking at a 4.9% increase year to date in intimate partner aggravated assaults. And that's an increase in 128 crimes. So year to date in 2021, 2,732 intimate partner aggravated assaults were reported, compared to 2,604 intimate partner aggravated assaults year to date in 2020. So that 5% is something that we are watching. And Commissioner Decker, I know you join us on the domestic violence advocacy calls, which we hold frequently, several times a month. And this is where we discuss trends, patterns with our very dedicated group of providers. So we will continue to link with them to see what they are also gleaning from their conversations with victims, other concerns from victims. And it's a very important conversation that we cannot afford to miss.
I certainly agree, Chief Grimala, and thank you for providing those additional statistics on aggravated assaults. These are very important numbers to track, and as you know, the advocates have been deeply concerned during the pandemic about what at first was the potential rise, the potential for an increase, the limited resources that victims who are at home with their abuser might perceive are available in the communities, and just trying to be sure that there's an increased awareness. I think these numbers are critically important to get out in the public, and I appreciate that. But just for my clarity in terms of the counting on the homicides, so it is based on the suspect who is arrested. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner, and the relationship to that particular victim. Yes.
Yes, understood. I just wanted to be sure that it was based on the probable cause of an arrest as opposed to a suspect who is under investigation.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. And to the extent the department has other numbers and can make them public, more public than is already happening with respect to what you're seeing in domestic violence, I think it'll be very important to raise awareness, but also so that victims and survivors of domestic abuse know that the department is focused on this and that there are services available. And I appreciate your attention to that, Chief Grimala. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, Chief, you talked about I guess the some good news that you're seeing in the numbers. And while not a time for celebration, we certainly all understand that there is at least things are going in the positive direction. And you talked about the participation of many in the community as well. I wonder if you can expand a little bit on the intervention workers, because during the pandemic, we did hear about their limited abilities through no fault of their own due to COVID restrictions and others about really doing the full scope of their skill set to assist the community with respect to violence. Can you give us a brief report on where the grid teams, all the intervention workers are in terms of getting back to the full scope of services that they traditionally provide the community?
Yes, Commissioner Decker, still with the limits of the ability for our grid workers and our CIWs to go where they used to be able to go pre-COVID, still is a challenge for them, but they're trying to rise to that occasion. For example, follow-ups to hospital type settings. Again, as we see some of the cases increasing of hospitalizations, their ability to outreach and to go and interview victims and witnesses and those family members who may have been impacted is still something of great concern, as we see that also with our probation and parole partners as well, trying to go into those areas where before it was just commonplace. But we see a good deployment and good interaction and good relationships, especially when we talk about Operation South Bureau, Operation Central Bureau. And again, I have to give credit to CSPB, Community Safety Partnership Bureau, because Imada Tingarides not only fosters those relationships within the housing developments, her and Director Joel as well, but she is also helping the geographic areas. For example, Southeast has a great relationship with CSPB, so that officers also may know who those intervention workers are. Watch commanders will know who those intervention workers are. And there's not some artificial line of demarcation. There is truly a relationship being built there. For example, on every shooting that is reported, every evening, doesn't matter the time of day, it is required that a text message goes out, the chief receives it, I do in his direct report, and there's a specific category in there. Has grid been notified? Have intervention workers been notified? And that isn't just a nice thing to do or the hope that you will do it. There's a name attached, there's a person attached to that, so that the chief and we as a whole department body will also be aware that we are making that connection, that it's not just happenstance. So I believe with Reggie Zachary, that relationship continues to be strong. But again, credit for that relationship depth goes to CSPB.
Thank you, Chief Grimala. I appreciate your responses. Thank you, Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Sobroff, I see you have your microphone open.
Thank you, Commissioner. Morning, Chief.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask you about Narcan, where we are in the department with Narcan. Are we using nasal spray now? How wide is it? How much is it being used in light of just the out of control fentanyl and opioid issues? I understand that the nasal spray is much easier to administer, takes a lot less training. I wonder how I don't know if you have this off the top of your tongue, but how is our supply of these? Who's carrying them, and is our usage going up as it rages?
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. So Narcan is available. Our officers do carry it, especially we've seen great life-saving work by the administration of Narcan, the nasal form, here in Central Division, where people have literally been brought back because of quick use of it. I don't have the exact numbers of how many individuals to whom we've administered Narcan have been able to be brought back from that horrible precipice of darkness. But we do have availability. I've not heard of any shortages. We have a good relationship with our Los Angeles City Fire Department, and they do help to make Narcan available to us as well. I'm happy to report back to you on numbers and how widespread that is, but we do know that when we have needed it and seen the opportunity to use it, it has been very, very effective, and we're very pleased about that as well. But also, Commissioner, to your point about fentanyl and these overdose deaths, we have seen that within our city, not just in other cities or counties or other places in the United States. So much so that when we have a situation where we have more than 2 or more persons that have overdosed on some type of narcotic, fentanyl, or some other drug that has been laced with fentanyl, we actually have established a protocol with the chief of police so that we can ensure that Gang and Narcotics Division is also notified, so that we're not just dealing with the emergency at hand, but what does that supply chain look like? Can we link it to any particular dealer or an establishment where maybe people had frequented prior to the overdose? So this is something where the department also is working with our friends and partners at DEA on this, which is just a killing machine. Fentanyl is a killing machine. There's no other way to say it. And sadly, many of our young people are buying from strangers, and they don't know what they're buying, and they think that they'll be able to find their way out of this high. And sadly, so many have not. We've seen that in Hollywood area. We've seen it in the Valley. We've seen it in North Hollywood. And it's heartbreaking as we see members of our community, 20, 25 years of age, losing their life to this epidemic.
Chief, where in the process of a beat officer going to work would they pick up their supply of Narcan? Would they just keep it in their pocket? Would they check it out with their equipment? Is it in the car? How widely available is it? And what's the process?
Yes, Commissioner Sobroff, they would carry it in their duty bags. So if they respond to a call for service and they find the need for it, they have the ability readily available to administer it as well. Also, they would be calling in conjunction with whatever response they're making for a rescue ambulance. And sometimes they get there before we do, and they have the ability to administer, as you know, as well.
And so on a duty bag, if they're, what percentage of duty bags do you think, if you went and looked at all of them today, would have something in it?
Yeah, that I couldn't answer you, and I always want to give as honest and thorough a response as possible, but we can get back to you on that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Commissioner Bonner.
Thank you very much. Morning, Chief Grimala.
Good morning,
Appreciate being
Commissioner
here
Bonner.
today. Thank you. I had 2 questions, and one related to COVID. I'm going to take advantage of the fact I know you're sitting in for the chief today, but you're also the director of the Office of Operations, so you would kind of probably know the answer to this question. You reported the if I was writing down this quickly, about 77% vaccination rate across the department. And do you know, the Office of Operations, at least, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think of it kind of as the being on the front line in the sense that you got the patrol officers who are potentially at greater risk, either from the public that they interact with, or in some cases to the public that they interact with. But it's that direct engagement with the public that I think is causing the basis of this inquiry. What does the picture look like, in Office of Operations, if you know, in terms of the 77% rate? You mentioned the roughly 23 exemption request. I think 1,100 of that was sworn, and the 2,500 roughly notices that have been sent out. Just give us the snapshot of what does the situation look like, whether it's by numbers or just generally speaking. Is it an outlier? Is it kind of, consistent with what you're seeing across the department, or anything of concern we should know about?
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bonner. So at least 3 times daily, we take a look at our deployment because we and the chief are very concerned about us not dipping below our minimum operating force or our ability to provide public safety. This is something that we do lose sleep over, just in anticipation of what could occur after December the 18th. However, so far, we have seen some success with our mobile vaccinations that we are still undergoing, which visit the different geographic areas. And we've had an additional 383, I believe, to date that have taken up at least 1 dose of the Moderna vaccine as we have gone around the city. So we do believe we're seeing an increase in vaccinations amongst our sworn employees. But as time goes by, the concern remains true. We're looking at what exemptions will be granted, medical and religious in nature, and where that will take us as we enter the holiday season and beyond. We're glad to see that we are seeing less hospitalizations, fewer people that are becoming incapacitated by COVID, but we're remaining diligent because we know how quickly that tide can change. As we look at different parts of the city, there are certain geographic areas, maybe 1 or 2 in each of the bureaus, that still, is providing somewhat of a challenge to this process. But what I can share with the public is each one of those individuals is being personally reached out by their commanding officer, either the geographic area captain or patrol captain, to ensure a conversation takes place one-on-one, a very personal conversation, because again, if our workforce is healthy and safe, that's how we can deliver the services which we took the oath to provide to this community.
So, but generally speaking, I don't know that I heard any particular concern, I guess is what I'm saying, with regard to this part of the department. Is that, and because hopefully those added efforts would be occurring across the department and in the other areas as well. But again, just generally speaking, any major outlying swing one way or the other, or is it, are you seeing that these efforts and activity is consistent with what you're seeing across the department?
I see overall, I would say, with a few fluctuating numbers here and there, a genuine consistency across the board. I wouldn't want to identify a certain areas as not being within that realm. And I believe the individual outreach is something that will help to provide better numbers for us. And again, safety and good health is what we're looking for.
Appreciate that. Second question is relating to you mentioned this Saturday, I believe you said, was the Transgender Remembrance Day. And I had seen an article, I think it was either last night or this evening, about the situation. This was in San Diego, I think, where a transgender woman was put into a jail facility with 3 men, or a bunch of men, I believe, and was beaten pretty severely. And the question is, can you comment just briefly on, I don't, none of us know the facts of that situation, of course, but just generally speaking, what is that risk and how is that managed at the department in terms of making sure that, you do have that duty to ensure the safety of those in the department's custody. So can you comment briefly on how that's handled at the detention facilities at LAPD?
Yes, thank you so much, Commissioner Bonner. I'd like to touch on a few things. First of all, in addition to the LAPD LGBTQ working group, we have the mayor's Transgender Advisory Council. And at the head of the Transgender Advisory Council, out of the office of Mayor Garcetti, is the head of the TAC, Mother Karina Samala. And Mother Karina has worked with the department over the years, as well as many other members of the transgender community, to ensure that all of our detention facilities properly screen and given several opportunities for members of the non-binary or transgender community to make any concerns known, meaning with regard to housing, with regard to medical issues, with regard to the ability to keep certain, for example, a hair piece, other things like that, which are part of the identity of the individual, so that people can come in and have their dignity intact within the facility. We also work and are working with review of PREA to make sure that when we talk about the rape, prison rape, and Incarceration Act, that are we in compliance? Are we assuring that when a member of, for example, the trans community, non-binary community comes within our detention areas, and again, we don't hold people more than for 48 hours, so we're a temporary facility as they move to the custody of the sheriff's department, but a lot can happen in that time. We've seen in custody death situations on the department. There is great concern, so we want to ensure that the discussions are always vital to all of our meetings, but we also want to hear from any members of the community that have concerns in that regard as well. But I think the screening and the updates to the screening form, and I want to also acknowledge Captain Orlando Chandler, who is the commanding officer of Custody Services Division, does a great job in making sure that we revisit that form and make sure it's in comport with the questions, issues, and changes that we experience today.
I appreciate that. It's just an area of interest that comes to mind, given the increasing attention that's being brought to bear on the full range of issues, I think, affecting the transgender community. So I'll look forward to hearing some more and learning some more about the prison rape, is it Incarceration Act, I believe it is. And by the way, the department is in compliance. You mentioned that that's one thing you look at. I presume there's no compliance issues there.
None that have been brought to my attention. We still have ongoing meetings as we look at some changes that may occur in 2022 as well.
Sure, appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bonner. Chief Grimala, I want to follow up on something that Commissioner Bonner was just talking about. I just want some clarification. Can you tell us, if you know, the percent of the operations and department that has been vaccinated versus the other departments? Or stated another way, you gave us a figure of 23% of the personnel who have not been vaccinated. That's 2,729 individuals. Of those individuals, what percent of them represent those in the Department of Operations?
Commissioner Briggs, thank you for the question. So I had reached out to Administrative Services Bureau, which is part of the Office of Support Services, to try to get a better focused number when we're talking about our sworn employees, since the numbers I gave you both meld civilian and sworn. Currently, the tracking system being used for all of these COVID-related numbers is a company called Bluestone. And currently, we do not have the ability, we're trying to work on that and hoping that change, for me to extract or obtain a report, such as what you're asking, Commissioner Briggs, for maybe a certain segment of the department. It could be Office of Operations, OO, it could be OSO, it could be a particular bureau. But currently, and I asked as recently as this morning. Is there a way for us to get those numbers? Is there a way for us to extract a report so that I could provide you with that? Because my intent this morning was to give you specifics with regard to kind of sworn numbers, OO, OSO, et cetera. I'm sad to report at this point in time, I'm unable to give you those numbers because the system as it is currently set up will not allow me to do so. My hope is that those issues will become resolved. I know that Anne Marie Sauer-Hale, her team, Brian Taft and Elena Azucan are working feverishly to try to get us that because it's critical. It's critical to know where we stand with regard to deployment and where our concerns should lie. But currently that system is creating some challenges.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. There being no further questions for Chief Grimala, at this time, we're going to go to item 2 on the agenda, the public comment period. Madam Secretary, can you please call the first caller?
Okay, our first speaker is caller ending 5417, followed by Baba Akili.
Yes, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. In my area in the San Fernando Valley, which would be the Foothill Division, we're having multiple parties that start out as kids' parties, and then they end about 1 or 2 in the morning, obviously disturbing the police either with a live band or very loud music, DJ music. And we have kids that are about like 5 or 6 that are leaving at 2 in the morning. That is unacceptable to me. I don't know how that is for the city of Los Angeles or the police department, what they think about it, but that needs to be addressed. And that's all I wanted to comment on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Baba Akili, followed by Q Jean-Marie.
Yes, this is Akili with Black Lives Matters LA. And the fact that you all have not discussed the swatting of Dr. Melina Abdullah at all and no reports on it is still shameful. And we are calling for an independent investigation into the swatting. We do not trust the internal process within the police department, the same department that does not have any complaints. We cannot trust. So we are calling for an independent investigation. And I yield my time. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, can we please go to the next caller? Madam Secretary.
Okay, our next speaker is Q Jean-Marie, followed by Zach Sherwin.
Good morning, everyone. Pastor Q, Church Without Walls, also with Clergy for Black Lives. As it relates to the COVID-19 numbers, you're talking about 70 COVID-19 cases in the police department. We are still concerned about how are you going to protect the public from those who refuse to get vaccinated. And clearly, I don't expect an answer for that, because obviously, when I come to these meetings, I don't expect anything to be done about what I say. I just do it so that it goes on the record. As it relates to guns, we have a national trial right now with someone who, in Kyle Rittenhouse, who had a gun illegally, and the entire nation, or half of the nation, is defending him and his right to carry guns. So this issue about getting guns off the streets, we don't trust that folks really want to get guns off the streets. As it relates to intervention workers, we definitely need more of that in our communities. We've been pushing for that, and we need more of that. We know that when folks say housing project, we know that most housing project, I used to live in several of them, And one of the housing projects I lived in was called the Carmelitos. We had a police substation in the Carmelitos. One night they pulled me over with helicopters and everything, and said I fit the description. And so we know that in these areas, we have a high concentration of police because I said it before and people tried to push back, but poverty breeds crime. I've lived everywhere from Texas to California, Compton, East Side, Long Beach, all over the place. And all these communities have one thing in common: poverty breeds crime. When God created human beings, he did not put them in a ghetto, he put them in a garden. Now, as it relates to Dr. Melina Abdullah, we definitely do not trust folks in the police department to tell us what the truth is. In the book of Hebrews, chapter 6, verse 16, it says, now when people take an oath, they call on someone greater than themselves to hold them to it. So who's going to hold the Los Angeles Police Department accountable to tell us the truth about what happened in Dr. Melina's situation? Why wasn't Dr. Melina informed before they went public with the information? And if there are teens, we want to know who these teens are. We want them identified so we can know who these teens are. And we know that their parents need to be held accountable for this situation, because people can die in this situation. Melina Abdullah could be dead today. Thank God we are holding you accountable. Blessings.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Zach Sherwin, followed by Gina Viola.
I'll speak on quote unquote all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Operation School Bell, this event at Universal where kids got the privilege of interacting with cops. I'm curious if every single one of the officers interacting with those children was vaccinated, or if some of them might have been among the literally thousands of LAPD officers who haven't gotten vaccinated. I won't even ask if the cops were all wearing masks. We all know from driving around town that they don't do that. I also want to say that this police department murders school kids. Jose Mendez was 16, Jesse Romero was 14. So the image of these officers performatively buddying around with children is hypocritical and sickening. Chief Grimala, I'd like to congratulate you on the reverent tone that you mustered when talking about the somber occasion of the Transgender Day of Remembrance. It doesn't quite square with my memories from the summer when LAPD officers were attacking trans rights activists with batons and rubber bullets outside of WeSpa. I'm remembering images of officers clubbing a trans rights supporter to the ground and firing beanbags full of lead pellets from a shotgun at point blank range at another trans rights supporter. So yeah, your observance of that Day of Remembrance doesn't mean much to me. Transgender people do experience oppression in society, and so do Black and brown and poor people and houseless people, and it is on their shoulders that your police department's violent racism falls disproportionately. So again, your words ring really hollow. The police department participating in something called United Against Hate is similarly rich, considering that we know that LAPD officers attended the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, though of course we still don't know who they are. We've seen photos of unmasked LAPD officers striding out of LAPD HQ, holding signs to attend the anti-vax protest at City Hall last week. There's the George Floyd Valentine, which remains unresolved. And I would also say that even though it's state sanctioned, LAPD's violent behavior also qualifies as hateful, again, because of its disproportionate impact on Black and brown and poor people. So yeah, the United Against Hate participation, it's meaningless. We need an independent investigation of LAPD's handling of the 3 swatting incidents at Dr. Melina Abdullah's home. That kind of harassment is shameful. It is hateful. We hear again and again in these meetings that LAPD wants to build trust with the community. Well, you've already heard how much trust exists in your internal review processes. This department needs to be defunded. The meeting started 10 minutes late. No acknowledgement from Commissioner Briggs of that. Certainly no apology. I guess we inferred from what we heard that Chief Grimala had a tech issue. I'm going to go ahead and construe that as further evidence of this commission's lack of respect for the community whose voice it purports to be in police affairs. The fact that it's been a year and a half that you've been making members of the public comment before they hear speakers present on the agenda items they're expected to be speaking on is absurd. It can't be said enough because its absurdity is limitless. And finally, at one point in Commissioner Soberoff's irrelevant question about Narcan, he said to Chief Grimala, quote, "I don't know if you have this information off the top of your tongue. Just wanted to affirm that the expression is the top of your head. I'll yield the rest of my time to the meeting."
Thank you. Next, we have Gina Viola, followed by Betty Lay.
I'd like to speak on items 1, 2, and 5A.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Go ahead and put it ×2 after all of Zach Sherwin's comments that just finished. I could not uplift them more strongly. This department's utter failure to manage COVID is our city's biggest threat to our safety, health, and well-being. Every meeting now, you have to take a huge portion of the meeting just to talk about cops out on the street who won't be vaccinated and won't wear masks and hang out with kids at Universal Studios. It's shameful, it's despicable, and it needs to stop today. They keep extending the deadline and they're doing that for you. Friday afternoon, news media alerted Dr. Melina Abdullah to a press release issued by the Los Angeles Police Department stating that arrests had been made related to 2 of the 3 swatting calls meant to terrorize her and her 3 children in 2020 and 2021. It speaks to their utter lack of care that the LAPD did not directly contact Dr. Abdullah to confirm the arrests prior to the issuance of the media statement. It is further worrisome that it took more than a year to provide any information on the first swatting, despite calls for an independent investigation by community groups, 2 Los Angeles City Council members, and Dr. Abdullah herself. No outreach to the victims or shows of concern were made until after the filing of a lawsuit and increased public outcry after 2 more incidents of targeted police intimidation at Dr. Abdullah's home. Even if the notion at the August 12, 2020 and September 29, 2021 attacks were orchestrated by a group of white teens were to be believed, LAPD clearly utilized the opening created to intimidate and threaten the Abdullah family. Moreover, police have minimized the clear and present danger that these calls brought to Dr. Abdullah and her children as young as 10 years old by casting the perpetrators as teens and gamers. Where else do we see that playing out? LAPD spokespersons went so far as to liken the surrounding of Dr. Abdullah's home by police in tactical gear armed with assault rifles to a game of ding-dong ditch. Such statements reinforce a pattern of labeling white adolescents as victims in their violent attacks on Black people. We see this right now in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. We see this happening right now, and it's happening right here in our city. While Black youth are not afforded the same right to childhood, how many Black youth have LAPD gunned down in the back? Oh, the names, or there's just too many names. LAPD has still not accounted for the second police targeting at Dr. Abdullah's home. They claim that the September 23rd, 2021 incident came in on an unrecorded LAPD phone line, have issued 3 differing accounts, and have not linked the teens to the incident. Each of these issues points to the fact that LAPD cannot be entrusted to investigate such occurrences. I stand with Black Lives Matter's call for an independent investigation. The LAPD cannot investigate itself, and this sham of an oversight body.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Betty Lay, followed by Kimberly Isaacs.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
Agenda items 3A, 3B, Chief's report, and public comment, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first off, everybody knows I support LAPD. And to make it clear, I want to thank Commissioner Briggs for his explanation of why there was a delay to get started this morning. Tech is an interesting subject, so I appreciate his explanation on that. I'd like to thank Chief Grimala for her report. It was very complete. I support all that. And I also support agenda items 3A and 3B. I'd like to thank the commissioners for their support last week for our presentation. And good luck to the CPAB presentation this morning. I also want to note that I think it's important that everybody gets vaccinated, but again, we have one race, human race, and we have a right to put in our body what we want. It shouldn't be run by the government. Thank you all, commissioners. I appreciate all of you. Stay safe, stay healthy. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Kimberly Isaacs, followed by TK.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them?
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, the first one, I would like to demand an independent investigation of LAPD's handling of the 3 swatting incidents at Dr. Melina Abdullah's home. The statement put out by the LAPD reinforces a pattern of labeling white adolescents as victims in their violent attacks on Black people, while Black youth are not afforded the same thing, right to childhood. LAPD still has not accounted for the second police targeting. LAPD cannot be entrusted to investigate its own occurrences. It's not correct. They should not be allowing to police themselves. It's a clear conflict of interest. And the other thing is why we're still waiting for the LAPD to hold officers accountable that refuse to be vaccinated to be met with the same fate as any other city employee. They must be terminated immediately because all city employees are supposed to be fully vaccinated by early October. The LAPD spends $8 million every day. This commission continues to pretend to provide oversight when what you provide is cover and legitimization for one of the most violent institutions in the United States, above and complete shame on all of you. We also demand that this commission and 45-minute time limit on public comment. It is an unreasonable amount of time for the city as large and troubled as ours. Like, you start out saying, oh, all comments will get to speak within 45 minutes, which, that's nothing. There are thousands and thousands, millions and millions of us here, and anyone that wants to call in should be able to speak and be heard. This limit, much like the recent cancellations of the 2 consecutive meetings, is laughable and insultingly transparent to stifle the police's voice. We also demand that this commission resume in-person meetings immediately and maintain a virtual option to provide comment. President Briggs, according to the rules of this commission, 4 million Angelenos are allowed to send their public comments into a meeting with numerous different agenda items and public discussions happening, as long as those emailed comments are sent in 6.5 hours before this meeting starts. People that are able to attend this meeting are allowed to give public comment, but it's required to happen before this commission, and the LAPD discussed numerous agenda items. It's been clear that this commission's idea of public comment is a formality and rooted in disrespect of the community. This commission is a rubber stamp that is complicit in the anti-Black violence inherent to the LAPD, and nothing makes that more apparent than the refusal to allow Angelenos the opportunity to speak on today's agenda items in order. It is interesting that every week we start off with the COVID status of the LAPD and how more people are affected and more people are hospitalized, and yet there is no.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have TK, followed by Blue.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First off, power and strength to all the families that have been killed by law enforcement. So Operation School Belt sounds like a military occupation. LAUSD students voted to get 25 million defunded. They don't want cops in schools. We don't want you interacting with our youth. Anti-hate National Month seems like the department needs to be abolished because all you do is practice hate, killing our Black and brown folks. Gramala talks about lives lost. Keep that same energy for our folks killed by pigs. Ghost guns. Captain John wasn't his home investigated for the LAPD stolen guns. The LAPD swatting on Dr. Abdullah. That needs an independent investigation. These white teens could have ties to white supremacy, cops, agents, Kyle Rittenhouse, just a prime example of, white people's history of violence and their uncivilized savagery. All mass shooters have been white males, young people to adults. They need to be held to the fullest extent. Thankfully, this did not end up being fatal because we know most times these incidents do. They need to be prosecuted and held to the highest extent. We need, let's see, we need cops out of hospitals and housing. We don't need CSP. Pigs do not prevent crime. These are intentional conditions created in Black and brown neighborhoods. Resources help prevention. $3 billion a year that the pigs eat up in our budget. We need that for housing and mental health and education and healthcare. We absolutely need to defund the police. Where is Chief Moore today? Just, you know, conveniently, he's not here to answer any hardball questions, you know, about the swatting of Dr. Abdullah. You know, it's highly suspect, y'all. It took a year to find out who these people are. You know, with the amount of surveillance y'all have, you should have been able to figure it out real quick. Maybe because it was an inside job. Yeah, white people are known for their violence, and white supremacy is somehow behind this interaction. And these people need to be held to the highest extent. I yield the rest of my time. Defund the police, abolish the police, and fund our Black and brown communities.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Blue, followed by Manar Sharban. Blue, you're on.
Oh, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Hi, I would like to speak on all of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. First, I want to comment on the Operation School Bell that we had last week. I just want to say what a great opportunity for our police officers and the communities, and a great opportunity and advantage for the kids. They absolutely love it. So we always appreciate when our officers can go out there and show support to the communities, and especially the kids. Keep it up. Let's do more of that. And, we that live in the community actually appreciate it. I'm also concerned about officers being ambushed and officers being targeted. This is a big concern for us. We appreciate every officer that's out there. And it seems like the assault against officers is really high this year. So I just want to keep that in mind, that we actually that do live in the community do appreciate our officers. We like seeing them around. And we need to stop blaming our officers on every single thing that happens in the community. How about holding the community responsible? How about holding people that actually make bad choices responsible, instead of always pointing and blaming police officers who actually really do a good job to protect a community or a city of 4 million. Regarding COVID and masks, well, again, of course, the finger is pointed at police officers for spreading COVID, and wearing masks. And well, officers are entitled to eat and drink and actually take their masks off and catch a breath every once in a while. How about starting a new ordinance or a new law that when protesters or offenders, how about they stand 6 foot back from our police officers? It does work both ways. Our officers are getting infected and are getting sick by people in the community as well, who make it a point to speak and spit and 2 inches away from their face. So let's not blame COVID and coronavirus and sickness on our police officers. Absolutely ridiculous. If an officer doesn't want to take a vaccine and an officer chooses that, then the chief will deal with that. But to blame them on getting our communities sick is just pathetic. I also want to make it a point to say, we have to listen to racist comments every single week, attacking Commissioner Briggs and, his wife and who he represents, yet in the same time, being, our officers being blamed as being racist and white supremacists. I guess there's a word for that. It's called being hypocritical. We appreciate our diverse police officers, and we appreciate diversity in all the academy classes this year.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Manar Jarban, followed by Melina Abdullah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Awesome. Y'all continue to frame LAPD as being vital to city safety. Yeah, every dollar LAPD spends on surveillance, violence, and caging is money that is taken away from services like housing and mental health care, schools, social services, and jobs. These services are the what keeps our communities safe, not policing. LAPD themselves don't follow laws and break them all the fucking time. LAPD will always selectively report on crimes and selectively uphold laws. When are you going to enforce those laws on your own officers? They are the only criminals in this city. LAPD pretends to care about the LGBTQ community when they are the ones that uphold laws that oppress us. Laws like 4118 that disproportionately affects the LGBTQ unhoused community in Los Angeles. LAPD are the ones that protect those who attack us. We saw the We Spot protest and what side the LAPD was protecting. An LAPD officer tore down and stepped on a trans flag on camera. That video was circulating on the internet. Many videos of them beating queer and trans folks at that protest with batons. They protected fascist, white supremacist trans folks who were attacking the trans rights protesters that day. LAPD is full of trans folks and queer folks. Their presence in our LGBTQ community is danger itself. There's no room for police in our communities. I want to echo the other speakers and demand an independent investigation on the LAPD swatting of Dr. Melina Abdullah's home. Why did the LAPD release a press release that there were some arrests made without contacting her first? This shows LAPD's neglect and lack of transparency. We can't trust the LAPD doing an internal investigation. We've seen it in the past. LAPD lies time after time. How can we trust them? We all know that there might have been some LAPD involvement in those swattings. That's why we are calling and demanding for an independent investigation on this incident. We demand the commitment to defunding the police and rejecting any form of donations for surveillance technologies that further push for discrimination in our communities. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Melina Abdullah, followed by caller ending 3146.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, I'd like to begin by saying that you know that I'm an organizer with Black Lives Matter. People recognize me also as a professor of Pan-African Studies, but I'm also a mother of 3 children who lives in the Crenshaw district, which you all know very well because my home was swatted 3 times in a little more than a year. So when callers call in and talk about representing community, let me say that I represent community, and so does every other caller who lives, most of whom live in neighborhoods like mine. So I want to be very clear about that I am a Black mother of 3 Black children in the Crenshaw district. I want to speak about this idea that police and LAPD is basically bribing and trying to push our children into acceptance and embrace of LAPD when we know LAPD brings them harm. They shouldn't be bribed with trips to Universal Studios. Police are not trained to be childcare workers, recreation workers, tutors. They're not trained for that. We want real workers, real recreation workers. We do want tickets to Universal Studios. Can we have youth workers bring them, please? We don't want LAPD bringing our children to these places. They are not professionals in doing that. We also want to lift up that this non-vaccination rate is hugely problematic, and it's higher than the general public when you factor in only the partially vaccinated folks, and that LAPD interacts with the public and breathes on us without masks on. Finally, I want to say that we need to open up in-person meetings, right? We know that you're using Zoom to duck accountability and to pull in your booster folks who wouldn't be speaking in language like that if they didn't have some close affiliation with LAPD. In-person meetings are really, really important. Everything else is opening up. Why are not public meetings opening up? That swatting of my house, those swattings of my house should be investigated by you. You are supposed to be the oversight body. Why are you not holding LAPD accountable? Why are you allowing them to speak in language like that those swatters are just innocent teens, like Kyle Rittenhouse is an innocent teen? They could have killed me multiple times in front of my children, and there's still one swatting from September 23rd, 2021 that has not been addressed. Please do your job. Please think about why you're here. Why are you sitting here if you're not going to actually represent the people? You were not appointed to these positions to be a rubber stamp for LAPD.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 3146, followed by Javier Hermosillo.
Hi, sorry it took so long.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster, and Chief, public input and anything on the docket. I'd like to speak about the
3
Black
minutes.
Lives Matter part. Thanks. Again, Halito Chimichokama. Now, so I know everybody's got something to say, but it wasn't, based on what I've said, it wasn't the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, or the HLS. It wasn't China hacking or Russia hacking. It sounds like it's Ohio hacking or Europe hacking. And Ohio is a Native American tribe, just like Cleveland or Detroit, you know, the Native American tribes. These three teens should not be able to sign a book deal or profit from this in movies or on speaking engagements. This is a form of slavery all over again, that some sick people would profit immorally off of Black people. Even if they're to get up 30 years from now and say what they did 30 years ago was wrong, they should not be able to do so. They should be prevented from doing that if it's possible. Making money off of this is wrong. This is their start to claim to fame. I'd like to know what the race of these kids are, and when did their parents get here? Or just a few years ago? Or are they third or fourth generation whiteys? Because I'm white. Now, I got to ask, though, what if it was true somebody took Melina hostage? What if that was true? See, about the parents, I want to know their religion, and the quality of their relationships with their children is very important. Now, I've noticed some other things like the stolen guns not talked about, January 6th, police officers at the riot not talked about. Now, I've noticed other things not spoken about, seems to blame Black Lives Matter. Where did the pallets of bricks or rocks come from, if it's true? They got placed around the protest zone, and it hasn't been found out who did that, because no one in the Black Lives Matter was orchestrating pallets being laid around the city so they could throw them at people. You see, that isn't true. But the idea is being blamed on Black Lives Matter that that's what they did. That's another one I haven't heard the end of. A lot of things like this. So duty to report misconduct, 210.46. You know, Bonner, people get killed for that. Ask JFK, the president, got his head shot off for telling the truth. That's pretty hard business. Now, Kalanchi not here. She talked, I don't know how much time I got, economic equity. And this, of the Oaxacan people, this is throughout everything. This economic inequality is what I call it, affects crime and the LAPD budget. This affects the community. The inequality is destruction, obliteration. It's targeted slavery to economic inequality, the nation or any individual. This is greatly affecting everything.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Javier Hermosillo, followed by Vivian Escalante. Javier, you're on. Okay, we'll come back to Javier. Vivian Escalante.
Yes, good morning. My name is Vivian Escalante. I am the CEO and president of Boyle Heights Community Partners. I've been born and raised in Boyle Heights. We have deep roots here in Los Angeles, generational family. And the one thing that is very troubling that has not been addressed is the ongoing gang violence that we have here with rival gangs, CAM, as well as State Street. There's now a new gang that targeted a store. Again, the ongoing tagging of CAM is just ridiculous. I don't know if the RICO Act can be applied, but we need to have the gangs removed. And there isn't anything being done about the gang violence in our community and the ongoing ridiculous amount of tagging that continues to go on, where our taxpayers are having to pay for graffiti removal. We have so many more important things that, and so many other issues with LAPD, gang violence, and we are very underserved in Boyle Heights. We are neglected. So I really appreciate that we get the gang task force doing their job, or something else that we are going to need, but go to the federal government and enact the RICO Act and remove these gangs. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, please, Madam Secretary.
We'll go to Javier Hermosillo.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Hi, yes. What items did you like to speak on?
I'd like to speak on all the items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First of all, I'm a multiple child producer of 5 Mexican-American kids, including a veteran from Afghanistan and Iraq, and 4 kids with degrees, all of whom work hard to pay their way through college. And we then help them after the fact because we taught them responsibility. On the issue of swatting of Dr. Molina Abdullah, it's been determined that a number of people across the country received these swatting calls, threats, etc., which is disgusting. But for her to suggest that it's only the Los Angeles Police Department to blame, she needs to read the newspapers or turn on the news or go online or whatever her sources of information are. In terms of the vaccinations, I think it's really interesting that the city council and everybody is ignoring the fact that our great mayor was vaccinated, and yet he's just coming back from isolation in Norway or somewhere in that region because he tested positive for COVID while he was overseas, rubbing elbows with his hopefully future boss, Mr. Biden. I think that this whole discussion is, to a certain extent, mute, because a number of these cases have gone before the United States Supreme Court, and so far they're trending in the direction of people's religious liberties, people's right to say no. That's not to argue that COVID isn't an issue. I've lost 17 friends to COVID, and I work hard and I'm vaccinated to make sure that I don't get it, Lord's will. But I think we have to be aware of our surroundings in discussing all of these things, because I hear so many ignorant remarks being made on these calls every single week. LAPD didn't call Dr. Abdullah's, threats, etc. These 16 idiots from around the country that did it 16 times are the ones to blame. In terms of the Kyle Rittenhouse issue of the guns, it was a rifle. He's entitled to have a rifle at his age. A handgun, no. And so it would be important for the people complaining about this to at least speak intelligently on the topic, or stay quiet until you know all the facts. Two more points. One is this issue of resuming the meetings with call and convenience. How interesting. You want to be able to call and curse and swear and spread your filth, but you don't want to just stand up in public and let people see who you are. And finally, this classless vulgarity that continues to occur. Thank you for beginning to censor those people, but you still have a ways to go. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And we have Michelle W.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, I just want to say that BLMLA demands an independent investigation of LAPD's handling of the 3 swatting incidents at Dr. Melina Abdullah's home. This statement put out by LAPD reinforces a sad, disturbing pattern of labeling white adolescents as victims in their violent attacks on Black people, while Black youth are not afforded the same right to childhood. LAPD still has not accounted for the second police targeting. LAPD cannot be entrusted to investigate such occurrences. An independent investigation of LAPD must occur. Next, I just want to say, why is LAPD above the city mandate that all city employees be fully vaccinated by early October? You know, the brother of my love has been on an oxygenating machine for over 2 months because he took the same stance as LAPD officials that did not believe that they did not need to be vaccinated. And the millions that he is causing just in his one person of not being willing to be vaccinated, his bills are astronomical expense to the state. LAPD already spends $8 million a day just in regular operations. We demand that any officers who refuse to be vaccinated be met with the same fate as any other employees. They must be terminated immediately. The cost of their ignorance is far too high. This commission continues to pretend to provide oversight when what you provide is cover and legitimization for one of the most violent institutions in the United States. It is absolute and complete shame on each of you. We demand that this commission end the 45-minute time limit on public comment. It's an unreasonable amount of time for a city as large as Los Angeles and troubled as LA is. This time limit, much like the recent cancellation of 2 consecutive meetings, is laughable and insultingly transparent effort to stifle the people's voice. We also demand that this commission resume in-person meetings immediately and maintain a virtual option to provide public comment. People that are able to attend this meeting are allowed to give public comment, but it's required to happen before this commission and the LAPD discusses numerous agenda items. It's been clear that this commission's idea of a quote unquote public comment is a formality and rooted in disrespect of the community. This commission has shown itself as a rubber stamp body that is complicit in the anti-Black violence and inherent to the LAPD, and nothing.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. President, that was our final public speaker.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, we'll go to item 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda items. Are there any commissioners who have questions on any of these items? Seeing none, I move that we adopt and approve items 3A and B on the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. The next item that we have on the agenda is item 4, the department's verbal presentation of the Olympic Community Police Station CPAP, as well as Captain Patricia Sandoval.
Mr. President, I don't see them logged on at this moment. Give me 1 second.
If they're not logged on at this, yeah, I'll give you a second.
Okay, we're having difficulty logging them on. I think we can move on with the next item.
Okay, can you bring up Deputy Chief Chris Pritchard, and we'll go to item 4B on the agenda, the department's report on Asian American Pacific Islander hate crimes.
Good morning, Chief Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, Chief Pitcher. How are you today?
I am very good. So we are here to discuss the department's report that is in response to a motion that emanated from the Public Safety Committee that specifically asked for three things. It asked for a report on the increase in hate crimes, and we added hate incidents also that targeted the AAPI community. Additionally, they requested information relative to the department's response to the trend and potential resources to reduce incidents of hate crimes and hate incidents. The second thing the Public Safety Committee asked for was a dialogue on the topic of disaggregation in terms of reporting and collecting data about nationality and country of origin of victims who report crimes, hate crimes or hate incidents. And then thirdly, they asked for the development of an online platform to report online hate crimes and hate incidents, allowing for a more effective geographic tracking of such incidents. So with me this morning to provide your specifics, and I know we discussed the hate crime, much of this several months ago, if you may recall, but we're here to do it all again for you and to update the numbers. I have with me today is the department's hate crimes coordinator, Detective Orlando Martinez from Robbery Homicide Division with me. And he will also be able to provide the specifics regarding the department's response and any other questions you may have regarding hate crimes and hate incidents.
Thank you, Chief. Welcome, Detective Martinez.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to have us discuss the response in order, or
Yes.
I know some of these things I'm sorry.
Can you go ahead and proceed with providing us with the number of the increase in the number of hate crimes since the last reports, if any, and then provide us with the department's response to that?
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn that over to Detective Martinez.
Thank you, sir. So compared to last year, overall hate crimes are up almost by 50%. But when specific to AAPI, last year we had a total of
we're good.
Last year we had a total of 15, and at the time of this report's writing, it was already at 32. So more than doubled with just a 3/4 of the year being passed. Also with hate incidents, it increased from 9 to 46. So a very large increase, and not only because of increased hate in the city, but also because of our outreach and letting people know how to report, what options are available to them. So the department, along with the DA's office and the city attorney, rewrote the hate crime policy, implemented it. Chief Pitcher also put out an additional chief of detectives notice on hate crime best practices. The chief and I did 2 different roll call trainings for all of the officers on the department, one in December and one in April. We're working with the city's 311 system to try to bring it up like the county 211 system to accept hate incident reports. Also, increasing the different languages that our website and information brochures and resources are available in for AAPI communities, also along with our other communities. And also working on getting together the community volunteer program, establishing that once more now that the pandemic is not as locked down as it was. We still have people who want to help, and in the communities that need it, whether, especially for AAPI, Olympic or Central, those communities want to come together and help partner with the police to help keep their elderly and vulnerable communities safe. So suggesting to the command officers to safely bring those programs together to involve the community and decrease this increase in hate.
A couple other things, Commissioner, is, and Chief Gramala can attest to this, is we increased foot patrols during this period in Chinatown and Little Tokyo under the direction of Deputy Chief Blake Chow, who is the department's liaison with the AAPI community. He has had several discussions with the individuals, particularly educating the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association in what we're doing in terms of hate crimes, how we investigate them, how we respond to them, conduct follow-ups, what we have available, as well as he has briefed the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. So we have a lot of things that are ongoing. In addition to, one of the more prevalent things is we have established the Los Angeles Hate Crimes Task Force with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We were joined by the LA County Sheriff's Department, and then subsequent to that, Beverly Hills PD joined up with us, as well as Glendale and Burbank Police Departments. We meet on a regular basis to discuss the trends in hate crimes and hate incidents, to identify those, and to ensure that the incidents that rise to the level for federal prosecution are presented, as well as we apply the appropriate resources and share cross-investigational strategies with everybody in this general area, which is the County of Los Angeles. We're trying to sign up more departments to join in with this. It's slow in the going, but we have the bigger agencies right now, the more effective agencies we feel working with this hate crimes task force, and it is enabling us to move forward, with more effective hate crimes strategies and investigations. Also, one of the great things that Detective Martinez did was he developed a hate crime awareness video. He had updated the department's video that is posted on the LAN. It's outstanding. I viewed it several times. It's called the Hate Crimes Tools and Resources, and it is in several AAPI languages, and it has been translated. It talks about and walks an individual through what a hate crime is versus a hate incident, gives them several scenarios as to how to identify one, and then what to do about it if you are a victim of a hate crime or a hate incident, and how to go about reporting it, and what you can expect from the department in terms of its response. So a lot of things that we've got going on in terms of the department's response relative to the hate crimes and hate incidents that targeted the AAPI communities. Questions regarding ask number 1 from the Public Safety Committee?
Yes, thank you, Chief Pitcher and Detective Martinez. I have a couple of questions before I open it up to some of the other commissioners. First, Detective Martinez, would you be so kind to give us the, an additional explanation of the difference between a hate crime, and give us some examples of what you are finding occurring in the communities versus the hate incidents, so that we, as well as members of the public who are listening in, have that clear definition in mind.
Yes, sir. So first, to be clear, there's no such thing as a hate incident legally. It is something that we used to call times of free speech that are motivated by hate. But legally, there's no such thing. The LAPD is one of the few agencies in the country that actually takes reports and tracks these because we feel it's that important. So if someone, for an example, for a hate incident, if I was standing on a street corner yelling slurs against a certain religion, that is protected by free speech. It is not illegal to do that. So that is something we would call a hate incident, and we would take a report and document that. Now, a hate crime, there is a penal code section for hate crime, but it's a very low level misdemeanor. So what usually happens in Los Angeles is you have another crime that is motivated by bias against protected characteristic. So if I don't like my neighbor and I spray paint on their wall some slur about their race, that would be vandalism that is motivated by bias. So in the books, it's reported as a vandalism, but LAPD tracks it as motivated by bias or a hate crime. So in the city of LA, our number one protected characteristic that is attacked is race, and it's those of African American descent or the Black community. They're our number one victims. Our number two victims are usually religion, the Jewish religion, or the LGBTQ and male gays. Sometimes they switch off. For the past couple of years because of the pandemic. Our number two has usually been anti-male gay. Religion is usually targeted by acts of vandalism. However, the LGBTQ community is usually victims of simple assaults and aggravated assaults. And when it comes to race, it's usually criminal threats, intimidation, threats of violence, and simple assaults. So in Los Angeles, we don't have hate groups coming out from outside coming in. It's usually residents to residents with those three top categories. I hope I answered your question.
You did. Thank you very much, Detective Martinez. I want to kind of expand on the issue of the Asian American Pacific Islander hate crimes that's the focus of today, but I appreciate the expansive answer. Can you tell me, for example, I know that Chief Pitcher indicated that we have increased our patrols, walking patrols and beat patrols, say within Little Tokyo and Chinatown and other areas of concentration where we have large Asian populations. Is that where the majority of these hate crimes, hate incidents are occurring, or is it citywide that we're finding?
Great question, sir. The majority of it is happening in two divisions. In Olympic Division, where we have Koreatown, and also in Central Division, which has Chinatown, Little Tokyo. So those are the areas where about 85% of our anti-AAPI crimes are happening. And they're happening mostly on the street or the sidewalk, chance encounters. So unlike someone going to a synagogue to attack a certain religion, these are usually stranger on stranger, never seen each other before, coming into contact one time where this is happening. So that's why the chief mentioned we're increasing patrols in those areas where our tracking has shown that they're occurring. But it is usually on the street and not at predetermined locations or meeting points. So it's very difficult to post at a certain area to prevent them from happening.
Are your investigations showing whether or not these are individuals who come from other sections of our city into, say, for example, Little Tokyo and or Chinatown and are causing these incidents, or are these just chance encounters on a street and because the victim in this instance happens to be Asian, something occurs, or are these just really just assaults because, and in my mind right now, the question is, in terms of the aggravated assault, is it the assault because the person is Asian? And so therefore it's almost like a crime of opportunity, as we've seen played out on this past year, unfortunately, in videos from around the country.
It really depends on the area, sir. When it comes to Central Division, the population that comes in is a lot more transient. So that would be suspects coming from different areas to the downtown area. However, in Koreatown, it's the opposite. It's resident on resident of the area. So it's a little bit of both, sir.
Thank you for that. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask whether or not any of the other commissioners have questions. I appreciate the presentation. This time I'd like to open it up. Commissioner Decker, I see your microphone is open.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. First, if I could ask when you respond to questions to please keep your masks on. I'm sure you're doing that as a courtesy to us to ensure we can hear you, but I assure we can hear you. So thank you for that. Secondly, thank you for the presentation today and for the past presentations. I think collectively they give us, the commission, a good perspective on everything that is that the department is working on. And I would like to make a few suggestions to you with respect to this report, which I don't feel reflects everything the department is doing and answers in detail the questions that council is actually asking of you. And I would make a recommendation first to, because this is the report you're proposing to send to council, correct?
Correct.
The fact sheet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I would recommend that you change that to be a memo to the Public Safety Committee addressing their questions. The fact sheet reads as something more presented to the chief. I take it the recommendations in the report are not recommendations you're asking the Public Safety Committee to adopt, but those are your departmental steps forward. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, ma'am. The Public Safety Committee asked three things. We didn't get to address two before you today, but they wanted to ask about the efficacy of disaggregation, and we conducted and held that discussion with the AAPI community to come back with what they felt, the ask was of the Public Safety Committee to not get as detailed in the department's response in recording their, country of origin or nationality. They have serious concerns with that. And so what we are reporting back to the Public Safety Committee is that the AAPI community in general, as Detective Martinez has discussed with them as well as others, do not want that information to get in that much of a granular detail. So what we are reporting back to them is that. And then the third area that they asked was that we come up with an online platform so that they can report hate incidents and hate crimes. And in discussion with the chief and other chiefs, it was determined that this is not a very effective means of ultimately discovering a hate incident or a hate crime from a hate incident because of the lack of public knowledge as to what constitutes either one. And so we feel that we would lose a tremendous amount of investigative effort and quality if we were not to do these in public. So our response in the chief's recommendation to the Public Safety Committee is one, obviously we're reporting to them our statistics. Two, we recommend that we do not disaggregate as per the wishes of the AAPI community, and also that it's very difficult to do so because we report to the California Department of Justice in their format, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Uniform Crime Reporting Standards, which does not allow for the disaggregation of those race and nationality values beyond which they have already established. And then the other part of that, ma'am, is that they wish that we don't get granular. They fear several different reasons for that, relative to the status, immigration, and some other things that we're bringing back to that public safety committee to not do that. So we've addressed all three of their recommendations, their asks of the department. And so, yes, this is the fact sheet as to our recommendations of supporting documentation, exactly why we're making those recommendations to them.
Right. So thank you, Chief. I realized we jumped in with questions when you had only gotten through the first step, so I appreciate you presenting that. My point to you and to you collectively, and it is a suggestion, substantively, I understand what you're saying. I will say I don't think the written report reflects everything you've either presented verbally to us today or in the past. And I think the Public Safety Committee would benefit from a bit more detail and perhaps a reframing of the report rather than a fact sheet as a direct response to the requests of the Public Safety Committee. The recommendations, I think it could be perceived as confusing, although they're very intelligent people on that committee. They would certainly understand you're not suggesting to them about bringing back volunteers and them voting on that. That's your step forward as a department, that you will be doing that as public safety protocols permit, of course. But I will also say that in reading your report on both, I think, disaggregation and the reporting of incidents, the online reporting system, I think what you presented could be, and again, this is my suggestion to the department, that you could present it with, I think, a bit more clarity. For example, when I read the report, it was not clear to me that the community groups concurred with not disaggregating, because it reads as the department concluded that we're not going to do that. And the request of the Public Safety Committee was to meet with all of these groups and get that feedback. And I'm just saying a little bit of reframing, I believe, I think the Public Safety Committee would benefit from just a greater explanation as to I know you meet with a lot of different groups. I know the department is having forums, that you continue throughout the pandemic to do that, but that you are meeting rather rigorously with a lot of different community groups to discuss these issues. And I think the report could really reflect the efforts that the department is taking on with a bit more detail. Similarly, on the report or the online reporting system, I would suggest that the crimes that are reported online, as you delineated them, those are obviously every crime is important and certainly very important to a victim, but those are fairly easy to express and provide the input of facts. And certainly with hate crimes, it's a far more complicated situation. And particularly since the department does count hate incidents, I think reflecting that with greater clarity would also benefit the Public Safety Committee to understand the thought process the department has put behind this, which I believe has been significant. But I did not get that from reading your report. And so my suggestion to you is, and I'm not saying I'm going to vote against this because I think it's certainly fine. I do think, however, my recommendation to you is that the department can use this as a greater opportunity to present the efforts that have gone behind each of these decisions that the Public Safety Committee clearly has expressed concern over, and a greater reflection of all the different issues that have been taking place, all the different efforts that have been taking place, and the reasoning behind the conclusions you've come to, as well as the steps forward you'll be taking that are now framed as recommendations, but they're not recommendations for the Public Safety Committee. At least that's my understanding. You're not asking them to vote on those recommendations.
No, we're responding to their request for that information.
Right, but you'll be making those additional changes in the future. And I think it should just be framed that way. That would be my recommendation to you. You can take it or leave it, but that was what I took away from the report when I reviewed it. I do want to thank you for the work that's going on, for your presentations to us as a commission. I think the report can really reflect all of that work a little more fully and effectively. At least that's my opinion, sirs. But thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you decide to do. Thank you. Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Mr. Soboroff, do you have any questions or comments? Commissioner Bonner.
Yes, if I might, although I noted that Chief Grimala's mic was open. Were you wanting, before I go in any different direction, were you wanting to comment? Chief Grimala?
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bonner. Just quickly, if perhaps there's a verbal component to the submission of that report, or the ability for the department to also speak to the Public Safety Committee regarding its work with the AAPI community, which also includes weekly meetings. And I know Commissioner Decker, you are on those as well with me. The great work of Chief Blake Chow and Commander Flores, under the leadership of Jessica Caloza, the Commissioner from Public Works. These are ongoing communications that we were actually encouraged to be a part of going back in February by former Vice President of the Police Commission, Paula Madison. So if there's an opportunity for that, I think that the department could join in elucidating some of the points, Commissioner Decker, that you brought about regarding the work of the department as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. So I had just a couple of questions for Detective Martinez and Chief Pritchard, and they're probably some bigger picture questions about the information here and how it relates to some of the couple other things you mentioned. First question you mentioned that if you were looking across a number of different areas, that the greater number of crimes and incidents occur relative to the Black residents, the Jewish community, and the LGBT community, or males, I believe. One question, and I'm sure this is answered in another report on hate crimes if there is, but generally speaking, how would you put the AAPI community in context, in comparison, to what we're seeing in the other areas? So we've talked a number of times this year, the legitimate concerns about the spikes, the increases. But what does that picture look like, generally speaking, if you were comparing across, the AAPI community, the Black community, Jewish, and LGBT?
So, Commissioner, to give you an example, for last year, since we have the complete year numbers, there were 173 anti-Black crimes. There were 15 anti-AAPI crimes. So that is the difference. However, the year before, there was only 5 anti-AAPI crimes. So that's why we talk about percentage increases, because 1 is too many. But when I see that humongous jump from 5 to 15, I know that there's an issue. If it goes from 140 to 150, it's a much smaller, even though it's a larger amount of crimes, it's a more steady occurrence. So trying to get in there with the statistics and see where our spikes are happening in the different communities over the past 5 years is where we can hopefully, you kind of plateau. You kind of have what you're used to, and when you see something that's out of the ordinary, hopefully to try to be proactive as a police department and prevent that increase from continuing or getting worse.
Yep, I understood. And, I've commented, I think, relative to the crime statistics generally, and even, I think, just statistics generally. It's not my strong point personally, but I think one of the things I'm always concerned about is, when you're looking for something that's gone up a couple percentage points or down a couple percentage points, sometimes there's a risk that the mind can trick you that they're into believing that there's an acceptable baseline, so like when you read that and that as long as it's not going up a certain percent or down a certain percent, we're okay. When I think increasingly, at least I, continue to focus really on the raw numbers. And so what does it mean, whether it's in this case, 173, hate crimes against Black people in the city, or what does it mean in, some of the larger real numbers and relative to crime? So it's just why I tend to ask for additional context behind the statistics that are helpful to think about. And one other question here, then you mentioned also, I think, some of the additional foot patrols in Chinatown and some of the other areas of concern. Are similar efforts, whether it's, I don't know that the same initiative would be appropriate across each category. You mentioned, for example, with the Jewish, the religious base, that's vandalism. With the LGBT communities, it's assault, I believe. And so I wouldn't say that the same approach or response is appropriate in every case. But is there in each of those areas some additional efforts being made across every category as well?
Absolutely, Commissioner. Chief Grimala has assured that the Office of Operations in all of the 21 areas, as well as here at Detective Bureau, we provide support. When we look at religious holidays, we look at issues that may spring up from race, ethnicity, religion, whatever that it may impact. One of the preventative measures is to put the officers out in the field and ultimately at critical sites, at different venues that may become victims to whatever we may be experiencing as a city, as a nation, and as a department. This is a common deployment that we do all of the time throughout the 21 areas in anticipation as a preventative measure. Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Yes, I'd like to piggyback on Chief Pitcher's very strong points. The city of Los Angeles is really a global community, and we have to be reflective. We have to stay in touch with the news cycles as well, to see what's happening, thousands of miles away, because we can see the impacts that it has locally. When we see issues, for example, in the Islamic countries, we ensure that we are touching with our imams, with religious faith leaders here to see, would you like to, or would you appreciate extra patrol around mosques, around regions, smaller communities within the greater Los Angeles that would provide that visibility and, quite frankly, some solace and a lessening of the anxiety? Oftentimes the answer is yes, and we provide it. To Chief Pitcher's points as well of the footbeats, we also do roll call in the street, where roll calls are taken out of the station setting. We do it in the streets so that people can see we are part of the community, we're visible, and then provide extra patrol from there. For the LGBTQ community, several years ago, in partnership with Jasmine Creighton, the LGBT Center, and others, we instituted an APAIT. We instituted the Midnight Stroll, which reaches out to members of the LGBTQ community after dark, where traditionally all they would see would be vice officers in the area or extra patrols for other reasons, but turning it into an outreach and engagement and safety initiative. We also took the Midnight Stroll with the leadership of Karina Samala, Mariana Marroquin, Jasmine Creighton into the 6th, 7th, and Alvarado area for the same reasons, as we saw increase in aggravated assaults against especially members of the transgender community. So we have many different ways in which we do outreach, but we also want to make sure it's done in a balanced and a sensitive manner, where we're just not a appearance there because it will satisfy whatever need of that moment. It has to be something where it's part of relationship and trust building. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Chief Grimala. The last question I'd ask for the detectives is, and apologize if this was referenced already, but what do we know, generally speaking, about the perpetrators? The perpetrators of hate, whether it's hate incidents or crime. Do we have any, data on I wouldn't say the typical profile, because I don't know if that really exists, but that's part of the question is, what do we know about the people on the other ends perpetrating the hate?
In the city of LA, it is, all of our police reports, all the data goes into the system, so it is searchable. And what we have here are usually residents committing hate incidents and hate crimes against other residents. So because we are such a diverse city, our suspect pool is just as diverse. They're usually males. They're usually between 18 and 34. But when it comes to suspect race, or that just depends on the area of the city. The suspect makeup in Central Division is very different than the suspect makeup in Topanga area. So we do have the ability to drill down that far, but I wouldn't be able to give you a general thing for the city. If you wanted specific areas, I could be more specific.
I appreciate that. I mean, I'm not necessarily making that request today. I'm trying to get kind of a general handle on that issue. I would also just finally ask, in regards to the perpetrators of whether, like, are there any trends that show, for example, that I don't know if there's repeat offenders in this area, where I know a lot of these situations, my impression is that you don't actually ever find the person who hurled the slur, or even in some cases committed the assault or something. So that's maybe one question, is really how often is the perpetrator really identified? And then in that, are there any trends one way or the other that shows that, yeah, an individual has been, much like a gun crime, for example, or other offenses where you find people who have multiple offenses? Are there people who have been identified who have had a history, whether it's showing up from one Jewish church or Jewish place of worship to another, or to another part of the community, or anything along those lines? I'm really again trying to bring out what, if anything, is known about perpetrators, and whether these are random situations, or people really do kind of focus on perpetrating hate.
Yes, sir. I'd say that the biggest trend that is obvious is there are a lot of our suspects are dealing with some type of mental health issue. And especially in the mid-city or downtown area, most of our suspects have some type of housing issue, being transient or having temporary housing. As for we at the LAPD, because I don't know if you've got, of course you have, our new policy states that instead of the substantial factor threshold that the law wants for a prosecution, to make sure our victims get the resources that they need, or connected to the resources that they need, and to make sure that we don't underreport. We at LAPD, if the bias, motivation, or the hate is 1% of the crime, we're making it a hate crime. That way we can acknowledge the victim and get them in touch with, hopefully, some non-governmental service that can help them for that type of incident. Now, the arrest that we make, once it gets sent over to the district attorney's office, it may not meet their legal threshold for prosecuting it, and the adding of supplemental charges for hate. But we still classify it as being bias motivated, because we want to make sure that in the moment they get connected to the correct victim services, because there's different types out there, and since this is such a specific one, we want to make sure that they get in touch. Suspect. Yeah. Suspect. Yeah. So I can get the numbers on our arrests and prosecutions. I just don't have that with me.
No, that's fine. And just lastly, I mean, I'm assuming that again, this is maybe a mixed picture relative to the AAPI community, or maybe that's part of the question, because you mentioned that I presume like there's at the synagogues, it's vandalism. You mentioned assaults relative to gay men or men in the LGBTQ spectrum. And then what is in the AAPI community, is it any rhyme or reason? Is it people going hands-on? Is it other things? And how much of it is really just something that occurs in the context of another crime versus somebody who directly maybe attacks someone, clearly based on race or ethnicity?
With the AAPI community, the #1 crime is simple assaults. So the lower level of pushing, spitting, taking a swing at them. And then #2 is the verbal threats, verbal intimidation. I'm going to do this to you, that type of thing. So that's how it is for the AAPI community, which is different than religion, transgender, and
Got it. Yep, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the report. And I know that some of the questioning goes beyond the particular focus of the reply to the council, but again, it's just sometimes helpful to compare some of these items across the board. So appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. I apologize. At this time, based on Commissioner Decker's comments and request, I want to move that we table the report and request that the department amend the report consistent with Commissioner Decker's comments, and that the department bring the report back to us either at the next regularly scheduled meeting or no later than December 7th. Is there a second?
I'll second that and add, I'd be happy to assist the department in ensuring it captures my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Pitcher and Detective Martinez. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go to item 4A on the agenda, the Olympic CPAP and Captain Patricia Sandoval.
Can anybody hear us?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So we do appreciate a few minutes here to share a little bit about Olympic area and our Community Police Advisory Board, also known as CPAP. We do have a PowerPoint that my co-chair is going to get started here, and then I'll introduce ourselves and we'll get going.
oh, if we can actually get the ability to share a screen, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, so it looks like we are on with our PowerPoint. So we'll make sure we get a full screen here. We're good to go? Okay, so if we can get to the next slide. So we are Olympic area, and I'd like to introduce myself. I am Patricia Sandoval. I'm the area captain here within Olympic area. And with me is my co-chair, Mr. Moises Gomez.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Good.
And then we've got an assistant co-chair. He is not here with us this morning, but Mr. Leo Magana. And we do have our secretary, Mr. Robert Reeves. He is not in the room with us either this morning. And, you know, I cannot thank the board enough. They are a tremendous support to myself and Olympic area. And the commitment and the dedication that Mr. Moises Gomez shows on a daily basis and a monthly basis with our CPAP meetings is just tremendous. So I really thank him, and I appreciate the partnership that we've had the last couple of years together. So we're going to go on to the next slide, and we just want to showcase a little bit about what the borders are here in Olympic, if you're not familiar with Olympic area. So we cover about 6¼ miles within the city of LA, and we are one of the most densely populated communities within the city. And if you look at our border on the north, we have Melrose Avenue. On the south, we border the 10 freeway, and then we're a little bit jagged on the west. We've got Crenshaw Boulevard and Plymouth Boulevard, And then we've got a straight border on our east side, which is Hoover. And we are smack dab in the middle of Mid-City, or as sometimes we're better known of Koreatown. And we are bordered by Hollywood Division, Wilshire Division, Southwest Division, and Rampart Division. If we go to the next map here, this is basically our basic car map. Within Olympic, we've got 10 basic cars, and those 10 basic cars are led by one senior lead officer in each basic car and a supervisor. And a senior lead officer, also known as a SLO, they're really a tremendous asset to the division. The SLO officer is someone that's been here for several years, has some seniority and time on the job and some tenure, and they really know how to handle the community, and they're just really a tremendous asset. They are responsible for a little part of the division, and they're kind of considered a jack of all trades for us. And when I say that, they handle patrol calls, they respond to community needs, they attend community events, community meetings, they host community meetings, they attend the neighborhood watch meetings and neighborhood council meetings. And they do attend CPAP, and they provide community updates and crime updates. So they're really a tremendous resource. Every division does have a senior lead group. Our next map here is basically our council districts within Olympic area. We do have 4, and we are very supportive of them as they are of us. So we're very blessed to have some great leaders that work with us. And our Olympic police station is actually in Council District 1. Our next slide here is just a little showcasing some of the different iconic locations within Olympic. We've got a community that folks love to come from all over to visit and tour and just enjoy the wonderful scenery, iconic locations and restaurants. And so I won't go through each one, but I think you can see that we've got some really great spots. And these are only a few. We've got so many more, but we thought we wanted to showcase a couple here on this map. When we go to our next slide, I'm going to be sharing now the discussion points with my partner here. But Olympic Division, we've got a very, very diverse, a very open, and a very wonderful CPAB. We've got approximately 20 active members, and that varies from month to month. But we feel very fortunate with the group that we do have. We do conduct our CPAB in English and in Spanish, as we have a very highly populated Spanish-speaking community within Olympic area. And some of the things that we've done is we've created 5 different committees that we think are very important within our division. And I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Moises Gomez, and he's going to tell you a little bit about each of these committees that we have within our CPAP.
Absolutely. Thank you, Captain. So first of all, hello, everyone. So again, the very first committee is the Homeless Outreach Committee, of course, having to deal with the reality of homelessness in the United, here in California, well, Los Angeles. So we work with various groups within the neighborhood, which includes everything from the neighborhood councils. We have 3 neighborhood councils in this area, the council district offices, the local business improvement districts, community groups, and neighborhood watch groups. Yes, for instance, we just recently had 5 large encampments, which were clustered around the avenue of Pico Boulevard and Menlo, which have recently been cleaned up. And these have been reported for quite a while. So we do believe that an all-hands approach where we try to get as many collaborative groups together to kind of address these issues within the division. The next one, of course, comes from crime awareness. We are cognizant of the fact that there has been an increase in crime, and we go ahead and do communicate that with the members of the community. And we'll spearhead certain initiatives like the lock it up and keep it out of sight, making sure individuals do not keep valuables that are visible in their cars, and make sure that if they do have valuables, please lock them up in their trunks. Also, making sure that the same mentality goes in when it comes to making sure that their car doors are locked, homes are locked as well, because there has been, of course, a small increase in grand theft auto. So communicating out to everyone in the community so they were aware of that. And also, like I said, keeping members informed of the current crime trends within the division. Next, we have traffic and safety.
Yeah, to traffic safety.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Traffic safety. So we have been keeping an eye on the conditions on the road when it comes to traffic and kind of like any kind of emergency situations that come up when it comes to traffic safety. I am happy to say that in the last year, we have seen no major accidents, injuries, or fatalities in the division because of the collaboration working with various groups in the neighborhood, primarily the neighborhood watch groups, to make sure any traffic issues are addressed as quickly as possible. Last, we have the cleanup committee. The area has been impacted greatly because of COVID, and there's been an increase in illegal dumping. So now that what seems to be the worst of COVID behind us, we're starting to spin up a lot of community activities surrounded around cleaning up the neighborhood. Case in point, we're working with Pico Union Neighborhood Council in regards to cleaning up this Union Street in November. We have a station cleanup in December 12th. And I believe the Business Improvement District will be providing some additional resources to clean up some of the trash that's kind of built up on Pico Boulevard. Lastly, we have our special events meeting, or committee, sorry. This has been severely limited, of course, because of COVID. But recently, we've had the National Night Out, of course, in August, which was a great success. And other special events that are coming up is a Shoes for Santa event where individuals within the community and businesses as well will be donating shoes to needy children, as well as a holiday toy drive. Same thing, we'll be collecting toys and giving out to children who are at risk. Lastly, CPAP during the pandemic. Of course, we haven't been able to meet in public, together in public in about 20 months at this point. So we went ahead and created everything virtually. So you were able to attend a Zoom meeting, of course, through Zoom. The word gets around to the various neighborhood councils and neighborhood watch groups and organizations with the community to let them know when the meetings are held. And we've been promoting, basically parroting the fact that the emphasis on testing and vaccination in the neighborhood, as the Pico Union neighborhood and Westlake have been greatly affected because of COVID. So we've been communicating the multiple pop-ups that come up, community vaccination sites, and we partner with the Business Improvement District to promote a COVID-19 resource page for businesses and residents, so then they have the latest information when it comes to the resources available for COVID, both for civil and actually business. And lastly, we went digital and we created a online CPAP website, and this is in conjunction with students at Loyola High School who were able to provide some technical expertise when it comes to this. So basically, our CPAP now has a home 24/7 online, where individuals can go ahead and see agendas, see the schedule of events, links to the various Zoom meetings for those CPAP meetings on a monthly basis. And it's become our primary way of, our primary outward-facing community resource to the neighborhood. With that said, any questions?
I'll start with some questions. We just, prior to your coming on, we just heard a report from the department on hate crimes, particularly with regard to Chinatown. What, if anything, is your CPAP doing to assist the department to curtail that type of incident or crimes, and or helping the community, protect themselves? Or are you involved in that aspect of enforcement and what's going on there to help abate those types of crimes?
Yes, sir. So our CPAP has been involved in a very limited aspect. We have talked about hate crimes and hate incidents and the definition and how to report. So we did provide some information to our CPAP so they could share that out. But our Olympic Boosters Association, they've really helped us. We've actually handled a press conference in front of the station with our boosters. And again, we talked about what is the difference between hate incident, hate crime. We talked about how to report. And we really talked about and honed in on how to be a good witness. So if you are witnessing this, what can you do to capture evidence, whether it be take a snapshot of the license plate on the car, if a car is involved, take a photo of the potential suspect and call 911, but don't intervene to get yourself hurt unless it's absolutely imminent. So our boosters have taken a little bit more of a lead role in this aspect for us. We also have been very blessed with receiving our hate crime pamphlets in Korean. The department was so gracious to ensure that we have them translated in Korean. So we've distributed those with our boosters, and we haven't done that with CPAP because we haven't had in-person CPAP. But with the boosters, we've been able to provide that to them. Many of them work within the community and they work with the Korean group. And so they've been able to distribute them to a lot of the stakeholders and a lot of the community members within the division. But you bring up a very good point. As the year progresses and hopefully into next year, once we start getting in-person CPAB meetings, maybe we'll be able to come up with some other additional community group that can help out to provide additional information on hate crimes.
Thank you very much, Captain. Are there any questions from the other commissioners at this point?
Sure.
Mr. Bonner?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions, please. Good to see you, Captain Sandoval and Mr. Gomez. I appreciate you being here today. I wanted to ask a couple of questions. One about just the overall feeling of safety or the crime situation in Olympic, because surprisingly, I think, I mean, of the 24 areas or so in the general rankings, I think that over year, you're not really at the top. I think you're around 17 or 18 in violent crime and property crimes, I believe. But that's still, I think, about almost 1,300 violent crimes or so this year, I believe, roughly, correct me if I'm wrong, and about 3,500 or 3,600 property crimes or something in that 6 square mile area that you mentioned. And so the question, just maybe this is Mr. Gomez, really is one, what would you say when you know, about how people generally feel in terms of safety there? And are the issues that you discuss and that people bring to the CPAB, are they primarily safety, you know, personal safety related or quality of life issues? I'm sure it's some combination of both, but give us a little flavor really of what, you know, you know, where most of the intense conversation seems to be.
Absolutely. And I'll take the second part of your question first, and that's the fact that, so again, a very diverse like body of residents here. So we base a lot of our work here with working with the various community groups that exist within here, whether that be the Business Improvement District, whether it be other nonprofits, whether it be other CBOs, Neighborhood Watch. And we're really good at being able to parrot that information to those various groups and basically implore them that, you know, it works both ways. Information shouldn't necessarily be one way. It needs to be, you know, come both ways. So we oftentimes get whatever information they're able to provide us, kind of inform the officers of what's going on in the neighborhood. And basically, and just we're able to pass out factual information to each of the various groups so they're aware of what's going on. Now, in regards to your first question, the neighborhood used to have a perception issue, particularly back in like the 1980s. Since that time, since the establishment of BID in cooperation with the various neighborhood groups, Pico Union, at least in the southern side, and most of like Koreatown, there's a general belief that it's actually a very safe neighborhood. The area does kind of have to deal with a legacy of bad history behind it, and oftentimes people's opinions of the neighborhood are kind of, you know, colored by that particular like pre-existing kind of bias, and the fact that the neighborhood isn't safe. Now, with that said, it's a combination, like you said, of personal safety and like environmental issues. Most of the times, you know, since the area is considered fairly safe, people have a tendency of letting their guard down when it comes to being aware of what's around them and also their own property. So oftentimes, like our number one crime statistic here is petty theft and or break-ins into cars. You know, giving people the opportunities, you know, or giving them the illusion of opportunity, potential like crimes of opportunity. Oftentimes, you don't see an awful lot of people being mugged or assaulted on the street. So overall, the ground belief is that the neighborhood is a safe neighborhood. It does have its up and downs, mostly because of just like some financial disinvestment from the city and the area overall. But overall, we're actually doing pretty really well.
And you mentioned a couple, thank you for that, by the way. And you mentioned a couple of times, both in your comments and even just now you referenced, I think, the Business Improvement District, but you mentioned a number of the other groups that the CPAB collaborates with. And I was pleased to hear that, because that was one of my questions was, what is the degree of collaboration with other groups aside from the LAPD, which would be an obvious point of collaboration, but there's a lot of others as well. And on that issue of, particularly within the businesses in the area, what would you say is generally the sentiment? Is it businesses that are concerned about, obviously any business would be concerned about crime, in and around a business and how safe people are there. But I'm thinking also about the question of whether you've heard any conversation that suggests that the level of crime is either something that has either influenced the business to either come there or stay there because of some comfort and assurances to the level of safety there, or the opposite, that maybe some jobs have been lost because business either closes or leaves the area because of it, because it's been vandalized or robbed or experienced some sort of criminal activity. So just wondering, what are you hearing on the part of business owners? And I'm not saying this on behalf of business owners, I'm really saying it on behalf of the residents who rely on businesses to locate and operate and hopefully expand in their community. Is crime playing any factor in those kinds of decisions, as best you can tell?
So crime is always a factor, not always a great factor, but a factor. And to kind of touch about the kind of the collaboration. So I actually happen to be the program manager for one of the business improvement districts. So just to kind of let you know the idea of the amount of collaboration. Some would almost, I hate to use the term incestuous, but it's just like, it's all relationship built. So, with that said, my relationships with the various local churches, various nonprofits in the area, the other business improvement district, which is the Wilshire Central Business District up in north, individual relationship with the various businesses, and you're talking to the residents that actually, do and engage in their daily business in the area. Crime is always an issue, and the fact that it's, is a safe neighborhood for the most part, yes. The bigger issues, challenges when it comes to, the businesses in the area is more like quality of life, homelessness encampments, illegal dumping, trash that's being dumped, low access to city services. That seems to be the bigger, really more worrisome issues that are affecting a lot of businesses, not necessarily crime per se.
Got it. Appreciate that. And by the way, I may come look you up to continue that line of discussion about, and it's just kind of furthering the theme that public safety does impact prosperity, or the level of prosperity that's available in the community.
No one wants to conduct their business in an area that they feel is unsafe.
Right.
Because they won't even leave their car. You create an environment that's conducive for people being able to do their daily business in a safe manner. It'll just attract business.
Absolutely. So as I say, I appreciate you meeting you this afternoon, because I may call and talk about that a little bit later. One last question I have about, you mentioned that you average about 20 or so active members on a monthly basis. Is that dominated by any particular demographic or profile? I'm saying, is it primarily business owners? Is it, residents? I'm sure it's some combination. But we've been asking about how well you're bringing in, the younger crowd, if you will. And I'm not talking about, kids per se, but I'm talking about, the 40 and under crowd of people who are going to hopefully be investing in and living in these communities for a long time as well. Are they, active? So just kind of talk a little bit about your membership, if you would.
Yeah, so our membership is really kind of a cross staff of everyone here within Olympic. We've got some, actually our secretary is in his 80s. So we've got some older generation, and then we actually have some students from Loyola High School. So we've got kind of a mix in between. We have some stay-home mothers and fathers, and then we've got some business folks. And we've got a few folks that work in the community, but they don't live here, and vice versa. So I think it's kind of a nice mixed group. And we really do appreciate the diversity, because I think it really brings about some different ideas. Sometimes we think we know best, and then we talk to the high school student, and he reminds us that maybe this is the trend. So we feel that we've got a really great diverse group. And in speaking about diversity, our students from Loyola actually were the ones that helped us put together our website. With the help of Mr. Gomez and one of our community relations officers. They put the ideas together and they created the website. So we thought it was a nice collaboration and a great trade-off between our resources.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate the information and the context. Again, for me, is I don't spend a lot of time in every part of the city, but that's one thing I find helpful about these conversations is gives us an opportunity. Even the slide that you presented with the various iconic structures that exist in Olympic, I think is important. Again, just to help us all remember, the rich diversity that we see throughout the city and how that's reflected in Olympic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. Commissioner Decker, did you have any questions?
Just briefly, really a comment, Captain Sandoval, good to see you again. Mr. Lopez Gomez, thank you very much for coming today. Your presentation was terrific. I recognize it takes time, not just to come in and present, but to prepare, and greatly appreciate the presentation as Commissioner Bonner reflected on the presentation of what Olympic is, its meaning to our city, how important it is. And it's, I remember being there at the opening of Olympic Station, so it's nice to see it has matured to such an integral part of the community. So thank you for your efforts. And we may need to outsource those students from Loyola High School throughout the city, given their amazing talents. So thank you for that, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Sobroff, did you have any questions?
I don't have questions. I just want to congratulate you on what you on Olympic and how the CPAB has really gotten involved. I have a question about Olympic drag racing issues you guys are having there, and how is the CPAB involved in that, etc.
Yes, so, we do have the streetcar racing, which has been a concern off and on. It's not on a regular basis, but the CPAB has not really had an involvement in that, to be honest. We do have our street racing task force, which is part of Operations West Bureau, that we send a unit from each division, and they collaborate and they work in the different areas. But that actually brings up a good point. I think it might be something that we can get the CPAB involved and get some ideas and maybe some information. So actually, thank you. That would be a good suggestion for us.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Captain Sandoval, Mr. Gomez, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I have visited your division there. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I do plan on going back now to, actually, the next time I come back, I do want to be with one of your slows to run around in the division there. But thank you very much for all of your hard work, because this is something that's important to our city. It helps keep our citizens safe. It helps keep the businesses safe. As Commissioner Decker was pointing out, people want to live in an area where they feel safe. They want to work in an area where they feel safe. And you are certainly helping that division feel safe, as well as the residents and the businesses. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point on the agenda, we're going to go into the closed session. I would say that we will open closed session at 12:25. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss Agenda Item 5A in accordance with Government Code 54957.
We have a quorum. I would ask that Mr. Tiefenk report out of the closed session.
The commission has concluded its work in closed session as it relates to item 5A1, non-tactical unintentional discharge 001-21. The commission on the unanimous vote of 4-0 adopted the chief of police recommendations, which were tactics, tactical debrief 1, detective 2, drawing and exhibiting does not apply, non-tactical unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge 1, detective 2. That concludes the report out.
Thank you, Mr. Tiefenk. There being no further business before the commission at this time, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. See you at the next meeting. Mr. Decker and Mr. Tiefenk, we can begin the other session at 1 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.